Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Unseen Wisdom. It's where we dig through the stacks of stuff you're already reading and pull out the most interesting bits. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Today's Duck Dive takes us into an interview with, wait for it, Errol Musk.
Oh.
Yep, Elon's dad.
Yeah.
We found this conversation over on the Wide Awake podcast. And let me tell you, there's some seriously thought-provoking stuff in here.
Yeah.
We're going to explore his unusual life, his family dynamics, which are, well, complicated, and get a whole new perspective on what shaped Elon Musk into the guy he is today.
What's fascinating here is that we usually see Elon through the lens of his companies, his tweets, all the noise surrounding him. But this interview pulls back the curtain and gives us a glimpse into the forces that shaped him, starting way back in his childhood.
All right, let's start with Errol himself. The guy's life is a story all on its own. He paints a picture of his early years in South Africa that's full of contrasts. He talked about his parents, who came from totally different worlds.
Yeah. His father was a World War II intelligence officer. Imagine the things he must have seen, the experiences he carried with him. Errol actually described his father as struggling to adjust to life after the war.
And his mother. She sounds like she was a real powerhouse, a skilled seamstress working in the fur trade to support the family, especially with Errol describing his dad as a weak man.
Oh, wow.
Pretty harsh words for your own father, right? You can really feel the weight of those different upbringings on Errol himself.
Absolutely. And that theme of overcoming hardship seems to echo through generations. Errol became incredibly successful at a young age. As a consulting engineer, owning multiple properties, and even a plane by the time he was 30.
A plane at 30. I'm still trying to figure out how to keep a house plant alive. But seriously, you can see how growing up around that kind of success might have influenced Elon's own grand ambitions and risk-taking personality.
It raises a question about the nature of ambition itself. Is it something we learn, or are we born with it? Maybe a bit of both.
Okay, so let's get into Elon's childhood. Errol described it as being filled with adventure. Motorbikes, horses, water skiing. Almost like something out of a movie, right?
Yeah.
It's a stark contrast to the image we sometimes get of a solitary, bullied kid. But Errol actually challenged that narrative,
Okay.
saying that South African schools were tough for everyone back then.
He even mentioned an incident where Elon got seriously hurt after making a careless remark to a classmate who had recently lost his father. It's a reminder of the different cultural context of that time and place. What might seem harsh to us today was, according to Errol, just how things were.
It's definitely a different lens to view those stories through. But it's important to remember that we're hearing this from Errol's perspective. What's interesting is how he downplayed the role of Asperger's in Elon's social difficulties. For those who don't know, Asperger's is a form of autism that can make social interaction challenging. Errol claimed he never even knew Elon had it,
Wow.
attributing his challenges to wealth and frequent travel. Do you think Elon might have shaped his own narrative about those experiences?
It's certainly possible. We all do that to some extent, shaping our memories to fit the story we tell ourselves. But remember, Errol also shared some stories that paint Elon in a pretty relatable light, like the time he got stood up at a movie theater.
Oh, what? Even a future Mars colonizer gets stood up sometimes. I love that. It's a reminder that everyone has those awkward universal experiences. Okay, things get really interesting when we start to unpack the family dynamics. Multiple marriages, divorces. It sounds like a pretty chaotic environment for the Musk kids to grow up in.
And at the center of that chaos is Errol's relationship with his stepdaughter, Jana de Zuidenhout, whom he helped raise after his second marriage ended.
He explained that his ex-wife, Heide Bezuidenhout, placed her children in state custody, and he felt compelled to step in and care for Jana. This obviously caused a huge rift in the family.
Understandably so. The age difference and their previous step-parent-stepchild relationship make it a very sensitive situation. It's important to remember, though, that we're only hearing one side of the story.
Absolutely. But it's clear that this relationship has deeply strained Errol's connection with Elon and the other children. This is on top of another tragedy. That impacted the family. The loss of Elon's first child, Nevada.
That's a heartbreak no parent should have to endure. I can only imagine the ripple effects of that kind of grief on the entire family. It makes you wonder how much that loss shaped Elon's worldview and his drive to achieve things on such a massive scale.
There's the family's move to America and their eventual return to South Africa.
That seems to have been the final straw for Elon. He felt strongly about staying in America, and the decision to leave went against his wishes.
It was actually Elon and his brother, Kimball, who, by the way, co-founded Zip2 and Tesla with Elon, who brought their younger half-sisters to America so they could have better opportunities and safety.
That speaks volumes about their bond and their desire to create a better life for their siblings, even if it meant further damaging their relationship with their father.
It's a tangled web, right? It makes you realize just how complex family relationships can be, especially when you factor in wealth, ambition, and global moves. But before we jump into Elon's incredible rise to success and his sometimes, shall we say, controversial actions, let's pause for a moment and let this all sink in. What are your thoughts so far? Are you surprised by anything you're hearing?
I'm particularly struck by the echoes between Errol's life and Elon's. The early success, the drive to challenge conventions. It's fascinating to see how those themes seem to run through the family.
It's almost like those early experiences set the stage for everything that came after, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it makes Errol's perspective on Elon's current life even more intriguing because despite all the success, Errol seems almost puzzled by the sheer scale of wealth Elon has accumulated.
It's like he's saying, Elon, why are you bothering with all this money when there's so much more to explore?
Right. Remember how Errol talked about upgrading his plane instead of just hoarding cash? It seems like he sees material possessions as a distraction from something bigger, something more meaningful.
This difference in perspective really comes through when they talk about innovation. While Errol acknowledges Elon's brilliance and his achievements, he doesn't hold back when it comes to their disagreement about rockets.
He flat out said that rockets are fine, but they're not going to get us to the stars. It's pretty bold to contradict your son, who literally runs a rocket company.
I know, right? But Errol's more interested in things like space-time travel and fusion, technologies that sound like they're straight out of science fiction. So for folks who aren't familiar, space-time is this mind-bending concept where space and time are actually woven together, and some physicists believe that manipulating it could allow for faster-than-light travel. It's still very theoretical.
Exactly. And fusion, of course, is the holy grail of energy production, creating power the same way the sun does. So you have Elon focused on building bigger and better rockets, while his dad is looking at these almost unimaginable leaps forward. It's a clash of visions for the future.
It's almost as if they're both driven by the same core desire to push boundaries. But they're approaching it from completely different angles. It's like they're both trying to reach the same mountain peak, but they've chosen different paths.
It makes you think about how our own backgrounds and experiences shape our ideas about what's possible, doesn't it? And this brings us to another point that Errol made that really struck me. He said that because Elon and Kimball grew up with wealth, they don't have that same yearning for material possessions that many people do.
It's almost like they see wealth as a given, not something to strive for. I wonder, does that change the way they approach risk, innovation, and even failure?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of how our early experiences with money shape our relationship with it later in life. It also makes me wonder if Errol's perspective on wealth ties into his concerns about Elon's recent behavior. He even said that Elon has made himself hated by the world.
Yeah, that was pretty intense. I'm guessing he's talking about some of the controversies around Elon's companies and his very public persona. It's like he's concerned that Elon's lost sight of something important in the pursuit of his goals.
It's another layer to their complex relationship, isn't it? It's not just about the past hurts and disagreements, but also this clash of values and worldviews. It makes their story feel even more universal because so many of us struggle to reconcile our ambitions with our relationships, with our values, and with the kind of impact we want to make on the world.
So where does that leave us? We've got this fascinating picture of a father and son, both incredibly driven, both pushing the boundaries of what's possible, but with drastically different approaches and perspectives. And it all makes you wonder, does understanding Errol Musk help us understand Elon Musk better?
It certainly provides context, doesn't it? We see the seeds of Elon's ambition, his comfort with risk, his willingness to challenge conventions, all those qualities that have made him both a visionary and a lightning rod for controversy. But it also raises some thought-provoking questions about the nature of success, the role of family, and the different paths we choose to make our mark on the world.
It's like peering through a kaleidoscope, isn't it? You see all these different facets of Elon's personality and motivations, and they all seem to trace back to this complicated, sometimes messy family dynamic. What does it all mean for us, the listeners? What can we take away from this deep dive into the world of Errol Musk?
For me, what stands out is how Errol's story challenges the simple narratives we often create around successful people. We tend to focus on the achievements, the wealth, the public persona. But hearing his father's perspective humanizes Elon. It reminds us that even the most influential figures are shaped by forces beyond their control, their families, their childhoods, the environments they grew up in.
It's like that saying, we are all just walking stories. And Errol's story sheds light on a side of Elon we rarely get to see.
And it makes you wonder, how many other unseen stories are out there? How many hidden influences shape the people who are shaping our world? Maybe the real wisdom lies not in idolizing successful people, but in understanding the complex journeys that led them to where they are.
Errol touched on something that keeps swirling around in my head. He said Elon and Kimball, because of their privileged upbringing, don't have the same hunger for material wealth that others might have.
That's a powerful observation. It makes you think about how our early experiences with money, or the lack thereof, can profoundly affect our relationship with it later in life.
Does growing up wealthy make you more or less ambitious? Does it make you more or less grateful for what you have?
It's a bit of a chicken or egg situation, isn't it? And it reminds me of something else Errol said that I found both intriguing and a little unsettling. He's really passionate about the future of space travel, believes it's humanity's next big leap, but he thinks rockets are a dead end. He's convinced we need to explore more radical ideas, like that space-time travel we talked about, and fusion energy.
And that difference of opinion with Elon, that's where things get really fascinating. Because it highlights the tension between practicality and imagination, between building on what we already have and daring to envision something entirely new.
It's almost a philosophical debate, isn't it? Are we destined to keep reaching for the stars, using the same tools, the same approaches? Or do we need a completely different mindset, a willingness to tear up the rule book and start from scratch?
And that's the challenge I think Errol throws down to all of us, whether we're entrepreneurs, scientists, or just curious listeners. If rockets aren't the future of space travel, then what is? What are the unseen possibilities that we're not even considering because we're so focused on the status quo? So I want to leave you with this. What stands out to you about Errol Musk's story to change how you see Elon Musk? And what are your thoughts about space travel, rockets, space-time bending, maybe something else entirely? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the stories behind the headlines, the ideas that make us think differently, and the wisdom that's often hidden in plain sight.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the unseen wisdom. Until next time, keep exploring and keep questioning.